You are standing in the shadowed alcoves of the Great Palace of Constantinople. On a humid evening in 867 AD, through latticed marble windows, the Bosphorus glimmers like molten gold under the setting sun, while inside, the air hangs heavy with frankincense, rosewater, and something more primal, the scent of bodies adorned with precious oils, and the metallic tang of blood from recent ceremonial scarification. Behind silk curtains that cost more than entire villages, you hear the whispered negotiations between a Basilissa and her eunuch advisors, planning a marriage alliance that will reshape the empire's future. The soft rustle of purple-dyed silk mingles with barely audible prayers to saints whose feast days coincide with fertility rituals. Far older than Christianity itself, a young woman emerges from the gynaeconitis, her face painted with white lead mixed with ground pearls, her lips stained crimson with cinnabar that will slowly poison her blood. She moves toward the throne room where Emperor Basilii awaits, but her steps carry the weight of customs so alien to modern understanding that they seem drawn from fevered dreams rather than historical reality. This is the Byzantine Empire at its zenith, heir to Rome, guardian of Orthodox Christianity, bridge between East and West, yet behind its golden mosaics and theological debates lay intimate practices that would challenge every assumption we hold about medieval life. What we understand as privacy, personal choice, and individual autonomy existed within frameworks so fundamentally different in Byzantium that they defy easy categorization. These weren't aberrations or exceptions to Byzantine civilization. They were woven into the fabric of law, religion, and daily existence, creating a society where power, faith, and sexuality intersected in ways that would simultaneously fascinate and horrify modern observers. Byzantine marriage represented a complex fusion of Roman legal tradition, Christian theology, and Eastern ceremonial practice that created unions serving multiple purposes simultaneously. Unlike Western European feudalism, Byzantine marriage among the aristocracy functioned as diplomatic statecraft, with the emperor personally approving unions that affected imperial policy. The Basilica, compiled under Leo VI around 900 AD, specified that marriages required not just parental consent, but imperial approval for anyone holding court rank above spathra effectively making the bedroom a matter of state security. Consider the marriage of Constantine VII Porphyrogenitus to Helena Lekapinos in 919 AD. Helena was the daughter of Romanos I Lekapinos, who had usurped power from Constantine's regency. Council, the wedding contract, preserved in the monastery of Studium, reveals the calculated nature of Byzantine matrimony. The union shall serve to legitimize the co-emperorship, while ensuring the Porphyrogenitus bloodline through offspring, born of both imperial houses. Should the marriage prove barren after 3 years, secondary wives may be blessed by the patriarch for the continuation of the purple-born lineage. The wedding ceremony itself lasted 3 days and involved rituals that blended Christian sacrament with pre-Christian fertility practices. Archaeological evidence from the Great Palace excavations reveals marriage chambers specifically designed for these ceremonies, with floor mosaics depicting Dionysiac scenes and hidden compartments containing amulets to ensure conception. Constantine himself recorded in his De Administrando Imperio, the marriage bed was blessed not only with holy water, but with earth from the 7 hills of Constantinople, wine from Lesvos, and oils pressed from olives grown in sacred groves, that the union might bind not just to bodies but to destinies under heaven's approval. Byzantine sexual education operated through a complex system of religious instruction, medical treatises, and whispered knowledge passed between women in the gynaeconitis. Young aristocratic women received formal instruction from older wives, and widows who held the title of cabicularia, literally those who knew the bedchamber secrets. These women taught not just the mechanics of sexual activity, but the elaborate rituals and expectations surrounding marital intimacy. The Synagogue of Patriarch Photius, written in the 860s, includes a fascinating section on the proper instruction of maidens destined for imperial marriage. Photius writes, "A young woman must learn to read her husband's desires not through words, for noble men rarely speak directly of such matters, but through the language of gesture, perfume, and strategic availability. She must understand the calendar of holy days when marital relations are forbidden, the precise oils that inflame masculine passion, and the positions that best ensure conception while maintaining the dignity appropriate to her station." The gynaeconitis itself functioned as a parallel universe within Byzantine palaces, governed by its own hierarchies, customs, and unwritten laws. Archaeological excavations at Mistras have revealed the physical layout of these women's quarters, elaborate suites connected by hidden passages, with private chapels, bathhouses, and chambers specifically designed for intimate instruction and medical treatments. The walls were decorated with frescoes depicting female saints, alongside more ambiguous figures that seemed to represent ancient fertility goddesses adapted for Christian consumption. Anna Komnenos, writing in the Alexiad around 1148, provides rare insights into the realities of life within the Ginekonitis. My mother's chambers contained mysteries I understood only after my own marriage. Women would arrive under cover of darkness, some seeking remedies for barrenness, others requesting potions to prevent unwanted conception, still others whispering of husbands whose desires had taken disturbing turns. The Calbacularia dispensed not just medicine but counsel, serving as confessors for sins that could never be spoken in any church. Byzantine medical knowledge about sexuality blended Greek anatomical understanding with Islamic pharmacology and Christian theological constraints, creating a unique approach to reproductive health. The medical treatises of Paul of Aegina, compiled in the 7th century and widely used throughout the Byzantine period, contain detailed descriptions of contraceptive methods and fertility treatments that reveal sophisticated understanding mixed with dangerous superstition. Paul's section on preventing conception without sin includes: a woman may drink wine mixed with willow bark and copper filings on the 3 days following her monthly purification. Alternatively, she may insert wool soaked in vinegar and honey before her husband approaches, though this method is less reliable and may cause inflammation. For those seeking conception, the juice of pomegranates mixed with frankincense, consumed during the waxing moon while facing eastward toward the Holy City, has proven effective in many cases. Archaeological evidence supports these medical practices. Excavations at the Pantocrator Monastery Hospital have revealed surgical instruments specifically designed for gynecological procedures, including bronze speculums and curettage tools that indicate Byzantine physicians performed operations that wouldn't be seen again. In Western Europe for centuries, chemical analysis of residues found in medicine jars reveals complex preparations containing ergot alkaloids, mercury compounds, and plant-based hormones that demonstrate sophisticated pharmacological knowledge. The monastery hospital records, preserved on parchment in the monastery library, include case studies that read like medical journals. Theodora, wife of the Megas Logothetes, age 28, suffered from excessive menstrual bleeding that prevented conception. Treatment: daily baths in water heated with iron shavings, consumption of wine mixed with ground pearls and crushed coral, application of heated bronze implements to encourage proper flow. Result: successful conception achieved within 4 months. Healthy male child delivered at full term. Byzantine law governing sexual conduct reflected the empire's position between East and West, incorporating Roman legal principles with Christian moral teaching and practical considerations of imperial governance. The Ecloga, promulgated by Leo III in 726 AD, established legal frameworks for sexual behavior that remained influential throughout the empire's existence. The law distinguished between different categories of sexual transgression based on social status, marital state, and the political implications of the act. Adultery involving the wives of senators or court officials was considered treason against the emperor's person, punishable by castration for men and exile to a nunnery for women. However, the same law provided elaborate procedures for wealthy men to acquire concubines legally, provided they weren't already married to citizens, and their children wouldn't inherit imperial titles. John Cantacuzenos, writing in his histories around 1370, describes a legal case that illustrates these complexities. The Sebastocrator Michael was accused of adultery with the wife of the Megas Dew. Under normal circumstances, this would mean death for both parties. However, the woman claimed she had been drugged with aphrodisiac potions and thus bore no responsibility for her actions. The court required extensive testimony from physicians, witnesses to her behavior, and chemical analysis of residues found in her chambers. The case lasted 6 months and ultimately resulted in the Byzantine economy included sexual services as a regulated but carefully hidden aspect of commercial life, unlike Roman prostitution, which operated openly. Byzantine commercial sex existed in legal shadows, technically forbidden by Christian law but practically tolerated through complex systems of licensing, taxation, and imperial oversight. The Book of the Eparch, a 10th century commercial regulation manual, contains coded references to establishments providing hospitality to traveling merchants that clearly describe brothels operating under imperial licenses. These businesses paid special taxes to the imperial treasury and operated under strict regulations. Women could not be forced into service. Establishments must be located away from churches, and all employees must undergo regular medical examinations by imperial physicians. Archaeological evidence from Thessalonica reveals the physical remains of such establishments, buildings with multiple small rooms, elaborate bathhouse facilities, and hidden passages connecting to nearby churches where clients could confess immediately after their visits. Chemical analysis of cosmetic residues found in these rooms reveals the same lead-based makeup used by aristocratic women, suggesting these establishments catered to wealthy clientele expecting luxury standards. The Emperor John II Komnenos issued a peculiar edict in 1140 that reveals the government's pragmatic approach, whereas the needs of merchants, soldiers, and other men separated from their lawful wives create temptations that endanger their souls, and whereas total prohibition has proven ineffective, we hereby establish that certain licensed establishments may provide companionship under strict regulation, provided all parties confess regularly and contribute generously to charitable works. Byzantine religious practices incorporated elements related to sexuality and fertility that created fascinating tensions with official Christian doctrine. The empire's position as heir to both Roman paganism and Eastern mystery religions resulted in syncretic practices that survived within Christian frameworks, often disguised as saint veneration or monastic tradition. That the cult of Saint Euphemia, popular throughout the empire, included fertility rituals that bore striking resemblance to ancient Dionysiac ceremonies. Archaeological excavations at her shrine in Chalcedon have revealed votive offerings clearly related to reproductive concerns, bronze models of sexual organs, carved ivory fertility symbols, and inscribed prayers requesting divine intervention in matters of conception, impotence, and marital harmony. Anna Dolisanos, mother of Emperor Alexios I, described these practices in letters preserved at the Lavra Monastery on the feast of Saint Euphemia. Women gather before dawn to drink wine, blessed at her shrine. They process through the city wearing garlands of myrtle and singing hymns that seem somehow older than our holy songs. The married women pray for children, the barren for conception, the widowed for new husbands. Though the patriarch disapproves, the emperor permits these observances, perhaps understanding that some needs transcend theological precision. Monastic life in Byzantium included same-sex relationships that operated within carefully defined boundaries of spiritual friendship and physical intimacy. The tradition of spiritual marriage between monks allowed for emotional and sometimes physical relationships that were justified through elaborate theological reasoning about the nature of divine love and the transcendence of earthly gender distinctions. The monastery of Studium preserved correspondence between monks that reveals these relationships' complexity. My beloved brother in Christ, the fire you kindle in my heart burns more purely than earthly passion, for it is directed toward God through the vessel of your holy presence. When we pray together through the night, our bodies pressed close in spiritual communion, we approach the divine mysteries more nearly than any married couple achieving fleshly union. Archaeological evidence from Mount Athos reveals monastery cells designed for 2 occupants, with shared sleeping arrangements and private chapels where spiritual marriages were blessed by abbots. These relationships were distinguished from sinful sodomy through elaborate theological arguments about the purification of desire through religious devotion. Though the practical distinctions often remained unclear to outside observers, Byzantine beauty standards demanded modifications to the human body that frequently proved dangerous or fatal. The empire's position at the crossroads of European, Asian, and African trade routes created a cosmopolitan culture where beauty incorporated elements from multiple traditions, often with horrifying consequences. Lead-based cosmetics remained popular throughout the Byzantine period, but the empire's wealth allowed for even more exotic and dangerous preparations. Archaeological analysis of cosmetic containers from aristocratic homes reveals makeup containing mercury, arsenic, antimony, and various plant-based toxins that created stunning visual effects, while slowly poisoning users. Liutprand of Cremona, visiting Constantinople in 968 AD, described the appearance of court ladies. Their faces shine like polished marble, achieved through daily applications of powders containing substances I dare not name. Their lips burn like coals, stained with preparations that leave metallic tastes in the mouths of those they kiss. Their eyes are rimmed with black that makes them appear larger than nature intended. Though I am told this treatment often leads to blindness in later years. Hair modification reached extreme levels among Byzantine aristocrats. Archaeological evidence reveals that wealthy women regularly used caustic chemicals to lighten their hair to golden shades, often resulting in permanent scalp damage and hair loss. The alternative elaborate wigs made from imported hair created its own problems with hygiene and parasite infestation. The Empress Zoe Carbonapsina, mistress and later wife of Leo VI, reportedly spent 4 hours daily on beauty treatments that included chemical hair lightening, lead-based face painting, and the application of various oils and unguents to achieve the pale, ethereal appearance considered ideal. Court records suggest she died from lead poisoning at age 34, though her death was officially attributed to fever. Byzantine childhood and adolescence included practices related to sexuality and gender identity that would seem shocking to modern sensibilities. The empire's complex social hierarchy meant that children's sexual development was shaped by their family's position, their intended careers, and the political needs of the state. Castration for the creation of eunuchs remained a significant aspect of Byzantine court life throughout the empire's existence. Boys from aristocratic families were sometimes voluntarily castrated to qualify for high court positions that were reserved for eunuchs, while children from poorer families might be sold. For this purpose, the procedure, usually performed between ages 8 and 12, was conducted by specialized physicians using techniques that minimized mortality, but often left survivors with complex physical and psychological consequences. The ceremonies of Constantine 7 describes the integration of these castrated boys into court life. The young eunuchs are educated in languages, mathematics, theology, and the subtle arts of palace diplomacy. They learn to move between the world of men and the gynaeconitis, serving as intermediaries in matters too delicate for ordinary messengers. Their altered state allows them to witness intimate family matters without threatening the honor of the households they serve. Archaeological excavations at the Great Palace have revealed educational facilities specifically designed for these eunuch children, including classrooms, dormitories, and medical facilities for their ongoing care. Graffiti left by these students, carved into marble walls, reveals their complex feelings about their altered status, some expressing gratitude for their elevated positions, others lamenting what they had lost. Marriage negotiations in Byzantine aristocratic families often began when children were still in infancy, with elaborate contracts specifying not just financial arrangements, but detailed provisions about the sexual education and preparation of the betrothed parties. These contracts, preserved in monastery archives, reveal how thoroughly sexuality was integrated into political and economic planning. A betrothal contract from 1156 between the families of John Cant, Akuzinos, and Anna Paleologos specifies, "The maiden shall be instructed in all matters pertaining to wifely duty by women of proven fertility and unblemished reputation. She shall learn the preparation of aphrodisiac wines, the calculation of favorable days for conception, and the proper conduct during her husband's periods of military service. The youth shall be educated in the management of female servants, the recognition of signs of pregnancy, and the appropriate frequency of marital relations for a man of his station." Byzantine divorce laws reflected the empire's unique position between Roman legal tradition and Christian moral teaching, creating complex procedures that varied dramatically based on social status and political considerations. Unlike Western European practices, Byzantine law allowed for divorce under specific circumstances, but the process often involved public humiliation, financial ruin, and social ostracism. The Basilica specifies 12 grounds for divorce, ranging from adultery and infertility to more subjective criteria, like excessive fondness for luxury or failure to provide adequate sexual satisfaction. However, the law applied differently to different social classes. Aristocratic women could initiate divorce proceedings under certain circumstances, while lower-class women had virtually no legal recourse regardless of their husbands' behavior. Procopius of Caesarea, in his Secret History written around 550, describes the divorce of a senator's wife who had failed to produce children. After 7 years of marriage, the woman was examined by imperial physicians who declared her womb damaged beyond repair. Her husband's family demanded the return of her dowry, claiming they had been deceived about her fertility. She was stripped of her jewelry and fine clothes in the courthouse. Forced to walk through the city in rough hemp while crowds jeered, her father accepted her return only after she agreed to enter a nunnery, effectively ending her worldly existence. The economic implications of divorce often proved more devastating than the social consequences. Divorced women typically lost access to their children, their property, and their social networks, leaving them dependent on family charity or forced into religious life. The few who managed to remarry usually had to accept significantly lower social status and financial security. Byzantine sexual practices included behaviors that were technically forbidden by Christian doctrine, but tolerated through complex theological reasoning and practical necessity. The empire's multicultural nature created spaces where different traditions intersected, producing hybrid practices that defied easy categorization. The tradition of spiritual concubinage allowed wealthy men to maintain long-term sexual relationships with women who couldn't legally marry them due to social status, existing marriages, or religious vows. These relationships were distinguished from simple adultery through elaborate ceremonies that borrowed elements from marriage rites while stopping short of sacramental union. A document from the monastery of Zeropotamu describes one such ceremony. The Megas Domestikos entered into spiritual union with Maria, widow of the former Logothetes, in the presence of witnesses including the bishops and the abbot of Studium. Holy water was blessed, rings exchanged, and vows spoken promising fidelity until death. Though not recognized as marriage by canon law, this union was blessed by learned theologians as representing the mystical marriage between Christ and the Church. Archaeological evidence suggests these relationships were more common than surviving documents indicate. Excavations at aristocratic estates have revealed residential quarters clearly designed for concubines and their children, including private chapels, separate servants' quarters, and hidden passages connecting to the main house. Chemical analysis of jewelry found in these quarters reveals precious metals and gems indicating significant wealth and status. The children of these unions occupied a complex legal position, not legitimate heirs, but often educated, and provided for better than many citizen children. Some achieved significant positions in government, the military, or the church, though they could never inherit imperial titles or marry into the highest aristocratic families. Byzantine medical knowledge about fertility and contraception advanced significantly beyond contemporary European understanding, partly due to the empire's connections with Islamic and Persian medical traditions. The medical school at Constantinople incorporated texts translated from Arabic, Persian, and Sanskrit sources, creating a sophisticated understanding of reproductive health that wouldn't be matched in Western Europe for centuries. The medical compendium of Oribasios, written for Emperor Julian around 360, but widely copied throughout the Byzantine period, contains detailed descriptions of contraceptive methods and fertility treatments that reveal remarkable anatomical knowledge. Oribasios describes surgical procedures for treating infertility, including techniques for clearing blocked fallopian tubes and correcting uterine malformations. More controversially, the text includes instructions for abortion procedures that were technically forbidden by Christian law but apparently practiced widely. For women whose lives are endangered by pregnancy or whose circumstances make childbirth inadvisable, the following procedure may be employed with prayer and fasting. The woman must first confess her sins and receive absolution, acknowledging that she acts from necessity rather than desire. Archaeological evidence from the Pantocrator Hospital supports these medical practices. Excavations have revealed surgical instruments specifically designed for gynecological procedures, including bronze speculums, curettage tools, and devices that appear designed for early-term abortion. Chemical analysis of medicine jars reveals complex preparations containing plant-based hormones, metallic compounds, and substances that would induce miscarriage while minimizing risk to the mother. The hospital records include case studies documenting these procedures. Helena, wife of the Protospathrios, age 19, pregnant for the 4th time in 3 years. Previous deliveries resulting in infant death due to her narrow hips. Examination revealed the ghosts of these marble halls remind us that intimacy has never been simple, that love has never been free from power, and that every culture's sexual customs reveal its deepest beliefs about who deserves dignity, who merits protection, and who can be sacrificed for the greater good. Their whispers carry across the centuries, speaking in languages we've forgotten, but in voices we still recognize the universal human struggle to find connection, pleasure, and meaning within the constraints that history and culture impose upon the heart.